Are you a pet parent looking for the ultimate pet pampering experience? At Party Paws Playhouse, they understand that your furry friends deserve the best. That's why they offer top-notch grooming service and a luxurious pet hotel experience like no other. Whether your four-legged family member needs a spa day with the expert groomers or a cozy staycation while you're away, Party Paws Playhouse has got you covered. Are you ready to make an appointment or a reservation? Give them a call today at 708-898-2358. The friendly staff is always there to assist you and to ensure your pet's comfort and happiness.
Don't let a DUI charge ruin your life. Get a professional and confidential evaluation from our experienced team at True Heights Treatment. Our evaluations are accepted by the majority of courts in the state of Illinois and provide a comprehensive assessment of your substance use patterns and potential treatment needs. Get the help you need today and start your path to a brighter future. Contact us now to schedule your evaluation at 708-248-7039 or at thtdui.com.
The George Brassey Podcast is made possible with funding provided from Brassey Global Strategies, LLC, a leading political consulting, public policy, government affairs, and research firm. Are you interested in running for elected office? Need advice? Call or email George, 708-769-5015. Brassey Global Strategies 1 at gmail.com.
The George Brassey Podcast is brought to you by Enzo's and Caramel Corn, located at 1710 Chicago Road in Chicago Heights, Illinois. Enzo's and Caramel Corn is the go-to spot for authentic Italian beef, pizza, and the most irresistible caramel corn you'll ever taste. Whether you're in the mood to dine in and savor the cozy atmosphere, grab a quick carry-out order, or have your favorites delivered right to your door, Enzo's and Caramel Corn has got you covered. 7 days a week and open late. Call Enzo's and Caramel Corn today at 708-754-7040 or visit them at enzosbeef.com. Hello everyone, this is George. I am so glad to welcome Mike Del Galdo to the podcast. Mike, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, George. I appreciate you having me. This
Mike,
is my first podcast.
One of your first interviews, right?
Yes.
Well, you're a hard guy, you're a busy guy to get a hold of, so it's understandable. Mike, but you weren't always that person. So can you talk a little bit about where you grew up and how that led to your interest in law, government, and politics?
Sure. I was born, my entire family, frankly, was born in New York and grew up in New York and New Jersey and moved out to Wheaton, Illinois when my dad, who was a publisher, got a new job opportunity. And I always identify more so with my family who remains in Jersey and New York than I do Wheaton, Illinois. So I guess technically I spent more time in Illinois than I have New Jersey. And I love being in Illinois now, but as a kid, I was more identified with being in New Jersey.
Mike, how old are you when your dad gets that new job and you guys move to Wheaton?
7th grade.
Okay. So you spent a majority of your early childhood in New Jersey, New York.
Correct.
Got it. Well, what was that transition like from New York and New Jersey to Wheaton?
Well, I think we might have been the only Italians, literally. There were cornfields primarily, and we couldn't find an Italian restaurant or an Italian deli. So it was entirely different than what I was used to and what I grew up as or accustomed to. But I played football, and I think sports, regardless of the sport, is a great way to make friends and assimilate into a new area. And I was good at playing football, and so it became easy. Just built friends in middle school, built friends in high school through playing sports, and it was a pretty smooth transition.
And Mike, you eventually become good enough at football where you can play college football. What position did you play, and What was your college football career like?
I played cornerback, not cornerback. I was a defensive back, and I played at Drake University, which is Division I AA, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I knew that I didn't have a career much beyond Drake University, but it was good again for the transition of focusing on time management in terms of how do you be a student athlete and a student, which most importantly is what people should do in college is focus on being a student. And it actually helped me um, go from high school to college without any of the trappings of staying out too late or doing things you shouldn't do because I had to wake up early for football or I had a game and we had to stay in on a Friday night because the game was on a Saturday. And so I don't have any career stats that are noteworthy for your podcast in terms of college football, but it was a good experience for me.
And Mike, what do you study in college? What is your major?
Political science.
Political science. And did you know at that point that you wanted to become an attorney, or were you thinking something else?
I did not. I went to high school went to college not knowing what I wanted to do. And I took a political science class and I found it fascinating, in terms of the history of politics and government in the United States. And I volunteered on a campaign in Iowa for a then state rep, Steve Churchill, who was a member of the Republican Party in Iowa, which generally speaking, being a Republican in Iowa is like being a Democrat in Cook County. That's the primary party in Iowa. And so I worked for him. And then I had an opportunity to work on Lamar Alexander's presidential campaign. He was the governor of Tennessee who ran for president. Didn't go far, but I was the college Republican for Lamar Alexander's campaign, and it gave me all kinds of experience and access to people that were influential in politics at the time and gave me insights into how politics works at a higher level.
Well, tell me about some of those insights that you gained from accessing more people who have, as we say in Illinois, clout. I don't know if you use that in Iowa, but we say that.
Yeah, no, I think politics is the same wherever you are. It's just, different ideology. But I think the process works the same no matter where you are. And I realized at that point that it wasn't about having the best policy or writing the smartest piece of legislation. It was about having the right people, the right team, and frankly, the right timing to advance your interests. And I think the best thing I learned about it was that it was a network that became important, a network of people, a network of relationships that frankly was the most important thing in politics.
So you learned this on the Alexander campaign. When do you decide to go to law school?
I went on they called it an internship, but it was a Washington Abroad program. My junior year, spring semester of my junior year. And I worked in Washington, D.C. for the House of Representatives. And I thought that a career in politics was going to be my trajectory. I liked it. And I worked in Congress, and I actually worked on what ultimately became the medical savings account bill that exists today. It's an entirely different form than what I worked on, but I worked on that legislation. I attended meetings at the White House Health Task Force, which was then President Clinton and headed up by Hillary Clinton. And so I realized that perhaps the best way for me to advance my interest in politics or government was not to be a legislative staffer. I think my dad used to make jokes that I might be the only person that has a job in government, but my dad has to supplement my income and send me checks every month just to live. And so I decided that law school would be probably a better option for me. And I applied for law school and ultimately attended DePaul University.
And Mike, those years at DePaul, did your politics change at all?
They did. I think the older I became, the more I learned about politics, the more relationships I built in Cook County, no longer identified with, the Republican Party. And frankly, when I worked for Republicans, it wasn't because I believed in Republican ideology. That was just the party you'd work for because that was who was in power in Iowa. And then similarly, When I came to Illinois, my ideology, my policies align more so with Democrats than Republicans. And it just happened to so work out that that's who was in power in Cook County, and it worked out well for me.
Mike, and so after you graduate law school, how do you end up in Springfield?
Well, my first job was actually in law school. I was the law clerk for the Village of Melrose Park. I had a mutual acquaintance who was an attorney for Melrose Park, and I met the mayor of Melrose Park and volunteered on his political campaign, knocking on doors, passing things out, volunteered on election day, and I was hired as a law clerk. And during law school, my second and third year, my job was going to the Village of Melrose Park, writing legislation, and doing research and the things that law clerks do. And so that's when I first realized that I enjoyed municipal law. I never knew that it was a practice area. I never had known anyone who practiced municipal law. And I found it fascinating that you could sort of ride the edge between being involved in government, but not being an elected official. And that a municipal lawyer could frankly be involved in the shaping of policy, significant decisions, because the first person someone reaches out to is the lawyer to determine if a policy is constitutional or if a decision is consistent with applicable law. And I truly enjoyed that mix of being in the private sector, or at least being a private attorney, and then the interaction with government, politics, and policies. And so I went back and forth to Springfield, and I continue to do so since 1998. And I try to spend as little time in Springfield as possible, but it's a necessary trip and a necessary place for my line of work.
And Mike, at some point you decided to start your own law practice.
Yes.
Talk about what led to that for you, and was that a difficult decision? Did you want to stick with a larger firm, or did you have to be out on your own?
It was an easy decision because there weren't larger firms that practice municipal law. Typically, municipal law has lower hourly billable rates than large law firms, so they have no interest in doing municipal law at a rate half of what they could bill a large corporation. And so there were a handful of municipal law firms, and I thought, I'm just going to try to make a go of it. I, talk to younger people now and say, bet on yourself. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work out and you can go apply for a job somewhere else. And so I formed a corporation, and it was just me. And my first client was the Village of Melrose Park, and I was their assistant village attorney.
And you're still that all the way to this day?
Correct. Yes. It is my longest client. And now we are one of the larger municipal law firms in the state, and Melrose Park remains a client to this day.
What do you think people could learn from your experience as a municipal attorney, and how you've built your practice to that size?
Well, I think there is no secret sauce, and it sounds cliche, but if you bet on yourself and you do hard work and you really focus on whatever it is, whether it's the practice of law or another field, that it takes a lot of hard work. And if that's what you want to do, then you need to put in the work. And I think that I used to look back of my friends who graduated from college and had jobs, and they were going out and I couldn't afford it, or I had a test the next day in law school. And so you lead a different life, in terms of the other friends you have, both in law school and in the early years, because instead of going out, I was trying to go to every single political event that I could. And there was never a shortage of people who I knew that had tickets to things, and I would go. I would go to build relationships. I would go sometimes because it was at a good restaurant, and the ticket included food and drinks. And when you're, 24, 25 and trying to run your own company and you don't have a bunch of disposable income, that was a perk. And so I would say the first 5 or so years of my life, I really did nothing else. I focused solely on trying to build relationships, get clients. My pitch used to be find your smallest, most insignificant case and let me work on it and just give me a shot. And I think you'll like working with me. And that was sort of how I sort of plugged along. I used to say it was like 3 yards in a cloud of dust in terms of, the football analogy.
Mike, you've represented a lot of municipalities and you've got a lot of relationships. Would you ever consider running for office yourself?
I don't think so. If I did, it would be for like a local office, like run for school board or run for something in a municipality solely for giving back, to the area that I've spent so much time of my life. But I would not run for a higher office. I think politics has changed. When I started, it was, the public presumed that politicians were good people and trying to help. And now I think the presumption is the opposite. And political campaigns have gotten much nastier than they used to be. And I think the business has changed. And I would much rather be on the private sector side.
Definitely understandable. Mike, the last question we always ask our guests is, what are 2 books that have been important to you as a person and why?
The first, from a business standpoint, would be Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. I think it was the first time I realized that there were factors outside of my control that would have significant bearing on my destiny. No matter how many cases I read or how much work I put in, there were certain things that would or would not align based on relationships or based on things that had absolutely nothing to do with me. And so I think it provided a way for me to start to try to balance my life. And I truly, to this day, think it's a great, great book, especially for people who operate or are in a business trajectory trying to run a company.
You've done your 10,000 hours, right?
I have, times 5.
Mm-hmm. And what would be the other book, Mike?
It would be Tom Brokaw's Greatest Generation. And my father was a World War II veteran. He was born during the Depression era. And he was older. He didn't get married until he was 40 and didn't have me till he was close to 50. And so it was not one of the younger fathers who was out identifying with whatever was popular for a middle school student or a high school student. And I think the book gave me great appreciation for what my dad went through and that entire generation of people who went into the service either because they had to, like my dad, and were drafted, or volunteered because they thought it was their duty as citizens. And I think it just harkens back to a different era that I wish to a certain extent still existed.
Mike, if the listeners wanted to connect with you on the internet, maybe learn about the practice representing their municipality, how would they find you?
We have a website. It is dlglawgroup.com. And we also are on social media. I have a Twitter account that primarily focuses on trends in law and politics.
Michael Del Galdo, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks, George. I appreciate the opportunity.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Begin to transform your life and work towards inner peace with expert psychotherapy. At True Heights Treatment, our experienced therapists provide personalized, compassionate care to help you overcome life's challenges and reach your goals. Whether you're struggling with depression, anxiety, relationship issues, or other mental health concerns, our team is here to support you. With a warm and welcoming in-person and virtual office atmosphere and a commitment to person-centered and evidence-based treatments, we are dedicated to helping you address your life's challenges. Contact us now to schedule your first session at 708-248-7039 or online at trueheightstx.com. Book your appointment today and start your journey towards a happier, healthier life.
Need more George? Like his pages on Facebook. Friends of George Brassey PAC, Fifth Ward Business Alliance, Chicago Heights Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center, and the George Brassey Podcast.